So, interactive description. What is it, and how do you go about it? Again, I doubt there'll be anything groundbreaking in here. But it's just a combination of all these factors to produce this simulation experience. Okay. So as I mentioned in a previous clip, the players create by asking questions and making statements. So even though this is a simulation and the game master is responsible for interpreting the resolution mechanics and providing this logical or plausible sense of what is occurring along the timeline of the game, players are certainly able to contribute to what's going on. No single person can keep all the details of a plausible world in mind. So I've found that it's best to approach things, or it's more efficient to approach things by keeping archetypes in mind. So as an example, it has been decided, as to follow the example we used before, it's been decided the players are going to go into a bar. So the game master could theoretically describe the bar down to the slightest detail, or could speak in more archetypal ways. So the players could ask something like, so they're creating through asking questions. Right? We're looking for a neighborhood bar. What kind of bar is this? Right? What sort of bar is it? Or what sort of people are here? Or they could start asking questions like, how big is it? How dirty is it? Kind of single detail responses. But the broader a palette you allow for, the easier it is for your brain to fill in information from the answers that you get. So we're looking for a neighborhood bar. What sort of bar is it? Then the game master begins to describe a familiar neighborhood bar, or kind of that scary bar that you accidentally wandered into in college, or a strip joint, or whatever. Right? The players can quickly latch onto what type of bar it is, and they already know, just like the game master does, what's supposed to be in there. And then can begin to navigate that scene. Okay, so in the simplest sense, they could say, what sort of bar is it? He says it's a neighborhood bar, like the Copper Penny. Tonight's special is meatloaf, and draft is on half price for the next 2 hours. And the characters can then feel free to navigate that environment just like they would in the real world, and can do things like make orders or make chit-chat with standard patrons without a lot of involvement from the game master, except portraying whatever NPCs might be necessary. It's not necessary to ask the GM's permission for element creation, and I think sometimes simulation gets labeled as being that way, that the game master is in control, sitting on above, and their imagination is the only imagination in the room. It doesn't have to work that way. So, for example, let's say the group has been involved with some kind of altercation with a gang, and they're chasing down one gang member, and he disappears down an alley. Well, most of the people around the table are going to be thinking, well, this is going to go to combat, so I'm going to want a lot of extra details that I don't normally ask for. And so, what's this alley like? Would be an easy way to get at that, rather than, is there a garbage can? Is there a dumpster? How clear is the street? Basic questions. So what's this alley like? And the game master might say, well, it's long, it's very narrow, it's formed by the backs of a bunch of small restaurants, so there's a heavy smell, a muddled smell of different food types and different ethnic cuisines, and in some places, the rot produces a very sharply unpleasant smell. There's a lot of garbage scattered all across the ground, and down both sides there are mixtures of garbage cans and dumpsters and empty shipping boxes and the like. So now everyone has this sense of that typical alley you see behind restaurants. They know what it smells like. They know what reasonably could be there. Now, both sides of the equation, both sides of the screen, can begin filling in blanks. The game master has identified basically the sort of place that it is, and rather than have him plot out every single detail that's there, we can all share that burden, and the game master can focus on what that gang member is doing. Right? So the player might say something like, well, I want to get behind a dumpster for cover. I think the ganger has a gun, so I'm going to press against the left wall and creep down as quietly as I can through the trash that's there, and get to cover as soon as I can. So an example of shared creation is, the game master's already identified there's a dumpster there, so there's nothing terribly creative on the player side about saying they want to go for cover there. But something that they might do is, that we know there's all kinds of trash, but it hasn't really been specified what that trash is, so the player might say, well, I'm going to pick up the first large rotten cabbage or fruit that I find, in case I can use it as a distraction later, like to throw and make a noise or something. What I find tends to happen at a table, at least among older gamers, is there something I can throw? So the game master doesn't know why you want to throw it. They might be able to guess, but they now have to decide, is there or is there not something to throw? And this is where always say yes comes in. We've talked about always say yes before, so they not only have to decide if there's something there, they have to decide what is there, because they were just asked, is there something there I can throw? And you get farther and farther away from immersion or connection to the scene. So the player can focus on intentions and try to make it clear from the very beginning of an action statement what the end point of that action is in their minds, without investing themselves in the outcome. Because this takes us into a position where we can find ourselves in opposition to the resolution mechanics. So the classic case is shooting, right? So you've got excellent combat score for using firearms, and you really want to take the villain down, and you announce when it's your turn to declare that you blow the villain's head off, and like in White Wolf, for example, you botch. Now you've just invested yourself so strongly in blowing the guy's head off because you're this fantastic shot, but the dice have indicated that you didn't. So now we have to kind of mentally rewind. And in a game like Savage Worlds, where people are constantly talking about whiff and ping, missing or hitting to no effect, this really kills the enjoyment. So your options are to either stop playing that game and stop using those mechanics, or to learn how to employ those mechanics to their best effect. And this is one of the ways that I've found to deal with this, and that is to focus on your intention and not become invested in the result. The result is the result. Declare what you are doing to get there. The dice determine whether or not that's successful. And you and the game master create the details around that result.